Nice to be invited along today. Richmond's been invited to speak as we're seen as being one of the authorities fairly proactive on managing food waste. As you said, there's a lot of food waste out there, and in 2000 Richmond and other West London Waste Authority boroughs undertook waste composition analysis of the household waste being presented by householders, and we identified that on average around 30% by mass of that waste was food waste. So immediately it was flagged by us as a key area for us to target, for us to be able to meet both our statutory targets that were being set upon us for waste and recycling targets and diversion from landfill, and to enable us to promote a proactive sustainability message, as we would call it now. We probably would have just called it an environmental message back then. So on the back of that, we secured funding from several sources to conduct some source-segregated food waste collection trials across most of the West London Authority boroughs. And at that time, it was just sort of uncooked vegetable waste due to the kind of incoming animal byproducts regulation issues and the collecting of meat wastes and uncooked waste. So we were kind of a bit hamstring from the beginning there. And that highlighted one of the important messages, issues around getting the message out to the public around food waste, and that's the complexity of messages it can be a hindrance. The simpler the message you deliver, the more effective it tends to be in being taken up by the public. So the fact that we were asking people to only put some food waste in and not all food waste into the collection scheme immediately put a lot of people off, and they told us this when we went round and asked for feedback and saying, well, you know, it's got gravy on it and the gravy's touched the other stuff, does that mean I can't put all of it in, can't I just put this bit in? So that was difficult. So we went on from there, from the trials, which started off, we had about, I think we had about 19% participation rate in Richmond, which we felt was fairly good at the time. And our political leadership at the time thought that it was an area to continue development. So Richmond remained as the only authority to continue collections from that point, and we, in a position with the kind of stabilisation of the advice on the animal byproducts regulations, to start all food waste to be collected under the collection scheme, and we started to then seek out infrastructure to meet animal byproducts regulations. And for us, that was one of the key difficulties, was to acquire enough capacity for meeting ABR compliance to meet the demand of our public to give us food waste. So despite the fact that we weren't sure we were going to find enough capacity, it was decided that because it was such a large fraction of the waste stream, we would drive on, and we expanded the food waste collection to a larger area in 2004, and it says we went borough-wide in 2004, it was actually 2005. I sort of got that a bit wrong when I was going my biog on the phone, so I apologise for that. But that was immediately showed also us the effect of a service being delivered across a wider area. The previous expanded trial, where we included all food waste, immediately went up to about 33% participation rate. And as soon as we went borough-wide, and the communications weren't significantly different, but we think the fact it was going across a wider area, and we were able to use a wider comm stream, so it probably went more into local newspapers and had a wider profile within the media, immediately got straight up to about 45% participation rate. The trials and the full bar-wide scheme was delivered without the assistance of free compostable liners, which many authorities provide now. Others still charge. We are now making the liners more available online by mail order and through our local libraries at cost, and we're getting more of a take-up for that. We are now considering we're doing a pilot study in partnership with RAP, providing free liners, to see the impact of providing free liners and improved comms to a mature collection scheme across our 65,000 curbside properties, to see the impact and then judge the cost benefits sort of analysis of that, to see whether or not the diversion savings from that provision will support free line provision, or whether or not we'll fall back to a more subsidised position. One of the most interesting things we started to to get back in feedback from the public was their comments to us about their realisations about what their waste was actually composed of when they started to take more effort to separate things out. So previously to the food waste scheme, we expanded the dry recycling. We'd already had comments that as soon as people started to segregate all of the dry recycling stream, they realised how much plastics there are in the waste stream, particularly plastics that we didn't recycle. And similarly with the diversion of food waste into the food waste collection scheme, many residents were saying to us that they didn't really quite realise how much food waste there was in their bin. And that kind of drip feed on a daily basis into the bin kind of really kept it under the radar for them how much food waste there was. So although there's a focus now at the moment on trying to detach waste minimisation away from recycling due to some confusion between the recycling and waste minimisation messages and where the priority should be, there is some key advantages to delivering recycling schemes and allowing them to be able to help signpost participants to the fact they're creating so much waste. And many of the residents then seem to be more willing to pick up messages, and certainly when we started to use the Love Food, Hate Waste literature and campaigning, we again had feedback from residents that the messages from that were useful and really did help them save producing waste, and they directly related that to financial saving for them. So as a local authority, we've got key drivers for us is our performance indicators, and the way that the kind of legislation is set up at the moment, the indicators are set up at the moment, for us we feel that it doesn't maximise, doesn't drive us very hard to want to go the extra mile to promote waste minimisation, despite the desire within us to do so. And our fears now is that with the financial constraints upon us, we're getting contraction on publicity budgets, and it's increasingly difficult to develop new collection methodologies and market those into our finance structures at a time of difficulty. So two things. One, that smooches back together some of our messages about waste recycling and waste minimisation, because we're going to have a constricted internal communications budget. So, which is one of the reasons we're hoping that we can really tie in with the national and regional work on waste minimisation to maximise what we can do locally. So we're certainly seeing benefits, and as you're saying, we were talking earlier before this, the analysis and the realisation, the monitoring of some of the waste minimisation is difficult. In Richmond and West London, historically, we've had a reducing overall waste risings for quite a few years now, even before we introduced food waste recycling, Love Food, Hate Waste, and that's tended to continue. And there's some masking of whether or not some of the waste minimisation promotion is perhaps not as effective as financial realities in the marketplace and effecting on consumer purchasing. So this is sort of one of the key areas going forward that we'd like to try and to look at, is how can we identify the benefit so that in these difficult financial times we can say there is worth in taking these messages, taking the effort to take these minimisation messages to the public, or not. Do we just continue with recycling and waste minimisation naturally follows on when people realise the composition of their waste? So hopefully I'll be able to throw in the conversation.
Thanks, David.